The conflict between hero and villain is often what makes a good story work. In almost all of fiction, the hero's motivation is counter to what the villain has done, is doing, or will do. Every step of the main character's journey is spurred on by the villain's scheming. The villain acts, the hero reacts, and the journey continues. Now, this is all a very simplified explanation of storytelling, but it demonstrates why these kind of fundamentals are so important. Because without a good villain, everything else ends up being kind of a dud. So with this in mind, I'm Dan from WhatCulture, and here are the 10 most disappointing video game villains. Number 10. The Arkham Knight. Batman Arkham Knight. As great as Rocksteady's Batman Arkham series was, they always struggled with their villains. We all remember the oddly cringe Joker Bane monster thing at the end of Batman Arkham Asylum. Then Arkham City course corrected a bit by spreading out its major antagonist roles across a few characters. And finally, they settled on an original villain in Arkham Knight. Except he wasn't original, as anyone with even a cursory knowledge of Batman lore knew it was Jason Todd, the second Robin who was killed by the Joker, only to return as the lethal vigilante Red Hood. And that's all the Arkham Knight is. Red Hood with a different helmet. Rocksteady really should have just used Red Hood. The story would have been so much better served having the dynamic between Batman and Jason from the beginning, rather than saving it for an endgame twist that everyone saw coming. Number 9. The Collectors. Mass Effect 2. BioWare's Mass Effect had a pretty good villain in Saren, which was only made stronger by the prequel novel that preceded the original title, which raised the question of whether or not Saren was being controlled or influenced by some outside force, which made him much more compelling. Of course, in the end, we find out that he has in fact been indoctrinated by his ship, which was actually a swarm of synthetic life forms called the Reapers, who wipe out life in the galaxy every several thousand years. And after a reveal like that, you'd expect to face them in some form in the sequel. Instead, we got the Collectors, mindless insectoid drones abducting humans as biomass to create their equally disappointing human-reaper hybrid, which was literally just a giant T-800 from Terminator. Learning the sad fact that the Collectors are what became of the Protheans was a juicy bit of lore, but not when they've been wiped of everything that made the Protheans interesting in the first place. And for as good a game as Mass Effect 2 is, this was just straight up disappointing. Number 8. President John Henry Eden. Fallout 3. The secret US government cabal, the Enclave, seem to have met their end during the climax of Fallout 2. That game's protagonist, the Chosen One, not only destroyed their main base, but also killed their new president, so their return in Fallout 3 was a surprise. On the one hand, it made sense that the US government might try to regroup in Washington DC, where there are no established governments. On the other hand, their defeat in Fallout 2 seemed pretty definitive. But what you didn't see coming was a secret second president, who's a computer? A computer who broadcasts on the radio and mostly talks about how awesome he is. And somehow the voice of some guy they've never even heard of is more than enough to rally the Enclave. It just doesn't make a ton of sense. The Enclave had a power structure. You'd think they'd have a formal plan for succession, but no. They were kind of all just chilling, waiting for some random guy to declare himself president? How does anyone ever lose to these guys? Number 7. Skullface. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. On a technical and gameplay level, Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain is a masterpiece. From a story perspective, however, it manages to be a disappointment compared to previous entries in the series. One major reason for this was the budgetary issues and subsequent falling out between designer Hideo Kojima and publisher Konami. But there were still issues present from the start, not the least of which being the primary villain, Skullface. For a series known for its iconic, over-the-top, hammy bad guys, the contrastingly restrained Skullface just couldn't live up to the bombastic tone of the games. Skullface simply does not have the charisma or personality to carry as much of the narrative as he needed to. Subdued nihilism can be a very interesting character trait, but when up against Snake's usual cast of villains who possess all the subtlety of pro wrestlers, anything less gets drowned out. Number 6. Lou and Mickey. Far Cry New Dawn. Confusingly, Ubisoft's Far Cry spin-off, New Dawn, is the only Far Cry game to take place after Far Cry 5's ending, in which the world is destroyed in a nuclear war. New Dawn is an enjoyable game, but unfortunately, for a series made exponentially more famous by its villains, Raider twins Lou and Mickey are probably the most forgettable in the entire series. While Far Cry's villains may have peaked early, with Far Cry 3's Voss, Lou and Mickey still managed to fall excessively far behind. Just about every other Far Cry villain has some sort of philosophy or guiding principle. The twins say they have some sort of vision for the future, but damned if anyone can actually figure out what that is. All they do is find the craziest people to give guns to and mostly let them run wild, while they play around on their dirt bikes. Number 5. CORYPHEUS, Dragon Age Inquisition. One thing BioWare's Dragon Age series has going for it is the world building, which is enhanced by the fact that the writers don't have to explain everything. Amongst those mysterious details is what really resulted in the dreaded Archdemons being unleashed onto the world. All we know is that things went horribly awry when a group of ancient mages tried to enter the Golden City and corrupted it. And ever since then, things have just been bad. One of those mages is CORYPHEUS, who escapes from his prison and returns to the world to do terrible things. However, for a major player in the most important catastrophe to ever befall this world, his priorities seem a tad skewed. In a world of old gods, darkspawn, and demons, CORYPHEUS' main goal is to make all elves slaves and exterminate other non-humans. So basically, he's a giant racist. And what about the Golden City? His fellow mages are still imprisoned, so shouldn't he want to free them or something? Nah, right now the elves gotta be put in their place, and then we'll see. Maybe. Number 4. DEVIN Weston, Grand Theft Auto 5. Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto series has never leaned too heavy on its villains. After all, some of the most colourful villains in the series are its protagonists. It's hard to top Vice City's Tommy Vercetti as a bad dude, but it's equally as hard to get more forgettable than GTA 5's DEVIN Weston. Unlike the gangsters and dirty cops who make up most of the GTA cast, Weston is basically just your average rich guy. And after trying to steal everything from the 3 protagonists, Weston is easily kidnapped and stuffed in the trunk of a car. He of course begs for his life, with the promise of the only thing that he has, money. And that's a hollow promise, since like every GTA game, you probably have more money than you could ever know how to spend by the game's end. And the second you lock him back in the trunk and push the car off a cliff, you've probably already forgotten this guy ever existed. Number 3. The Speaker, Gears of War 4. General Ram, Scourge, the Locust Queen herself. These are the 3 main antagonists in the original Gears of War trilogy, and they were all badass and unique in their own right. These villains elevated the games that they were in, and did a damn good job of looking cool while they did it. Roll on Gears of War 4, the Coalition's first attempt at a Gears game, after Epic sold the franchise to Microsoft. And while it's generally considered as one of the weakest games in the series, there are elements present in this game which work incredibly well. The main villain, however, is not one of those elements. Known as the Speaker, this big bad present in Gears 4 was just plain boring. Sure, the boss fight versus the Swarmak is kinda cool on a first playthrough, but that has nothing to do with the Speaker. Visually, he looks just like any other Scion present in Gears 4, and his bland design is complemented by an even blander, generic evil personality. Again, this is following the likes of General Ram, who was just a total badass and was so menacing. The Speaker was just mind-numbingly dull, and was such a letdown to most fans of the franchise. And just like any other grub, he got curb-stomped back into his hole. Number 2. Scott Shelby, Heavy Rain. Now, I don't hate Heavy Rain. It has some interesting ideas that almost come together, but by the end, it goes completely off the rails. Heavy Rain is a game where you alternate between 4 characters, all hunting down the same serial killer, known as the Origami Killer. So, who is the Origami Killer? Well, it turns out he's one of those 4 playable characters, Private Detective Scott Shelby. Through a series of flashbacks, we learn not only of Shelby's motive, but then we also see that the game was basically just lying to us whenever we controlled him, twisting the narrative and not showing us what really happened, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. And number 1, NECRON, Final Fantasy IX. Okay, we get it. For a game about existentialism, in which every major character is facing their own existential crisis, you have to include death in there somewhere, right? But saving it for the very end of the game, where the concept of death is embodied by a last-second boss encounter that literally appears out of nowhere and is more or less immediately forgotten about, isn't what I'd call, well, good. After saving the world from the game's actual villain, our protagonist is suddenly addressed by a mysterious voice, NECRON. He says he's been observing the game's events and has concluded that life only exists to die. So he's gonna kill everything. You then fight and beat him, and he's undone by the revelation of how powerful the will to live actually is. That's the entirety of this guy's role in the game. Pretty much a weird, dark, edgy, teenage journal entry condensed into a boss fight. And that's the list. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. You can follow me on Twitter at DanJDurkin. Then be sure to subscribe to WhatCulture Gaming for more content like this every single day. For now though, I've been Dan, and I'll catch you in the next one.